The last weekend we talked about the new unit up on Route 9, my daughter asked me what the sirens sounded like when they were scared. She was 6. She didn't mean it as a metaphor. She'd heard them test every first Wednesday at noon, standing in the yard of her mother's house 4 blocks from Unit 23, and she'd decided the sirens had feelings. She wanted to know if they cried differently when they were actually afraid versus when they were just practicing. I told her they sounded exactly the same either way. She said that was the saddest thing she'd ever heard. I think about that conversation now more than I should. Because she was wrong about the sirens having feelings, but she was right about the sound. There is a difference. I know that now. I'm the one who made it true. I need to explain how this started. My name is Elliot Marsh. For 11 years, I've been a field technician for Garvin County Emergency Management in central Oklahoma. My official title is Outdoor Warning System Maintenance Specialist, which means I'm the person who keeps tornado sirens operational across 412 square miles of mixed suburban, agricultural, and light industrial terrain. Garvin County runs 38 siren units. 26 are Federal Signal 2001 to 130 electromechanical models mounted on Class II utility poles at 40 to 50 feet. 9 are newer electronic units, Federal Signal Modulator Series, ground-mounted in concrete pads with self-contained battery backup. 3 are legacy American Signal T-128 rotary units that the county never allocated funds to replace, so they sit on lattice towers near the older grain elevators south of Pauls Valley, and I keep them running with parts 1 order out of my own pocket because the alternative is 2,000 people outside the coverage footprint. This is not a one-person operation. I have a partner. Wade Cotter has been with the program almost as long as I have, 9 years this October. We split the county roughly north-south. I handle everything above Highway 19, Wade handles everything below it plus the 3 legacy units. We share the 12 units along the highway itself on a rotating monthly basis. We report to Denise Hamlin, the county EM director, who reports to the Board of County Commissioners, who report to voters who don't think about tornado sirens until a tornado happens. We also have institutional contact with the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Norman, the Skywarn Spotter Network for our area, the Garvin County Sheriff's Office Dispatch, and the 3 municipal fire departments that fall within our coverage area. During severe weather season, roughly late March through early June, we are in daily coordination with NWS Norman on system readiness, and on active warning days, Denise or her deputy activates the entire county system through a central DTMF controller housed in the basement of the county administration building. The activation system works like this: NWS issues a tornado warning for any polygon that touches Garvin County. The warning carries a same code. Our county FIPS code is 040049. When that code comes across the dedicated NOAA weather radio receiver in the EM office, the duty officer confirms the polygon on radar, then sends a DTMF activation command over a dedicated VHF frequency to all 38 siren controllers simultaneously. Each controller decodes the signal and activates its siren in the pre-programmed mode: 3 minutes of steady tone for a tornado warning, wail for a general severe weather alert. After 3 minutes, the siren stops. If the threat persists, the duty officer can reactivate manually. There is no all-clear signal. That was phased out years ago nationwide. People are supposed to monitor media for the all-clear. Every siren controller logs the activation timestamp, the signal mode, the duration, and any fault codes. Those logs are stored locally on each controller's memory board and transmitted weekly via cellular modem to a maintenance server that Wade and I access through a county-issued laptop. I've looked at thousands of these logs. They are, Under normal circumstances, the most boring documents in existence. A siren activates, runs for its programmed duration, and stops. The log confirms it. The world moves on. I'm telling you all of this because you need to understand that this is an engineered system. It was designed by intelligent people. It has redundancies, checks, documented procedures, and 2 technicians whose sole job is to make sure every component works exactly as specified. It is not mysterious. It is not ambiguous. It is concrete and steel and copper wire and compressed air pushed through a 12-port rotor stator assembly at 790 Hz. And I broke it. Not physically. Not in a way that shows up on any diagnostic. I broke it in a way that I can hear and no instrument can measure. The first Wednesday in April, this year. Monthly test. Noon. Standard procedure. Denise sends the test activation from the EM office. All 38 units receive the command. Each siren runs for 60 seconds in steady alert mode, shortened from the standard 3-minute activation because it's just a test. Citizens are notified in advance through the county website and social media. We've been doing this every first Wednesday, March through October, for as long as the program has existed. Wade and I were both in the field that day, positioned at different units to do listening checks. I was at Unit 14, which sits on a wooden pole behind the Walmart on Pauls Valley's North Commercial Strip. Wade was at Unit 31, one of the legacy units down south near Elmore City. We each had our handheld radios tuned to the county maintenance frequency and our phones open to the monitoring portal. 12 hours, activation command sent. I heard Unit 14 spin up. The chopper motor engaged, the rotator motor kicked in, and the head began its slow 3 RPM sweep. The sound built from a mechanical grind to the full 130 decibel steady tone within about 4 seconds. I was wearing my electronic ear protection, 3M Peltor X5 as, rated NR31, and standing approximately 200 feet south of the pole, which put me right at the edge of the uncomfortable but not damaging zone. I had my SPL meter running on the phone for the field report. 60 seconds. The siren wound down. The rotator stopped. I checked the monitoring portal. Unit 14, activation confirmed, steady mode, duration 60 seconds, no faults. Nominal. I keyed my radio. Unit 14, good test. No issues. Wade came back a few seconds later. Unit 31, good test. She's running a little rough on the spin-up but she's in spec. I'll pull the brushes next week. Denise confirmed from the office. All 38 activated. All 38 confirmed. Good test, gentlemen. See you next month. Normal. Completely, documentably normal. Except I heard something. Not during the test. After it. In the 3 or 4 seconds after Unit 14 wound down, while the chopper motor was decelerating and the last of the air was pushing through the stator ports, there was a quality to the sound that wasn't mechanical. I don't mean it sounded like a voice or a song or a word. I mean the decay, the way the pitch dropped as the motor slowed, had a shape to it that I recognized. It sounded like my daughter saying my name. Not clearly. Not literally. Not in a way I could play back on a recording and point to. It was more like the acoustic envelope of her voice, the specific timing of the rise and fall, the resonance profile, the way she drops the second syllable of daddy slightly below the first, was embedded in the mechanical decay of a 12-port rotor spinning down from 790 Hz. I stood there in the Walmart parking lot with my ear protection half off and my SPL meter app still running, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, which was the specific weight of missing her. Claire lives with her mother, Adrienne, in Purcell, 22 miles north. I get her every other weekend and Wednesday evenings. The custody arrangement is civil, which is a word people use when they mean the bleeding has stopped but the scar still pulls. I had not heard my daughter say my name in person for 9 days. And the siren, my siren, the one I maintained, the one I'd replaced the collector ring assembly on in January and rebalanced the clutch on in March, had just played me back the sound of her. I dismissed it. I drove to my next unit. I wrote up the field report. I went home. But I thought about it. And the next morning, when I was doing a routine maintenance check on Unit 9, an electronic modulator unit on the east side of Maysville, I pulled up the audio waveform from the monitoring system and looked at the decay signature of Unit 14's test. The monitoring system doesn't record audio. It records activation parameters, voltage, current draw, duration, frequency, and fault codes. So there was nothing to listen to. But the current draw data during the final 3 seconds of deceleration showed a completely normal exponential decay curve. No anomalies. No unexpected load. Nothing. I should have let it go. Here's what I did instead. I installed a microphone. This was not authorized. The county maintenance protocol does not include audio monitoring of siren units. The sirens are mechanical devices. They either work or they don't. You check them with a current meter and a spring scale and your own ears during monthly tests. Nobody records them. I bought a weatherproof condenser microphone, an Earthworks M30, which I could not afford, and a small digital recorder with a 256 gig SD card. I mounted them in a waterproof housing that I bolted to the utility pole 12 feet below the siren head of Unit 14, ran a power cable from the controller's auxiliary 12-volt terminal, and configured the recorder to activate on a sound pressure threshold of 85 decibels. Anything below 85 dB, ambient traffic, wind, birds, wouldn't trigger it. But a siren activation at 200 feet would bury the needle. I did this on a Saturday. I did not tell Wade. I did not tell Denise. I did not file a modification report, which I am required to do for any non-standard equipment attached to a siren installation. I had been a careful, by-the-book technician for 11 years and I violated 3 separate maintenance protocols in one afternoon because a sound that lasted less than 4 seconds made me miss my kid. That was my first choice. Everything that follows came from it. For 3 weeks, nothing happened. Oklahoma in April gave us 2 watch days but no warnings. The siren sat silent. My recorder collected nothing. Then, on April 27th, we got our first real activation of the season. NWS Norman issued a tornado warning at 4:47 p.m. for a polygon covering the northeast quadrant of Garvin County. A confirmed wall cloud with rotation had been spotted by a Skywarn volunteer north of Stratford, tracking southwest. Denise activated all 38 units at 4:48 p.m. The sirens ran for 3 minutes, were reactivated at 4:54 p.m. for another 3-minute cycle, and stood down at 4:59 p.m. when the warning was allowed to expire. The storm produced a brief EF-0 touchdown in a field east of Stratford. No injuries. No structural damage. A clean event. I was at the EM office during the activation, helping Denise coordinate with NWS and the sheriff's office. I didn't get out to Unit 14 until the next morning. I climbed the pole. The recorder had captured both activation cycles. Total audio, approximately 6 minutes of continuous siren output plus the spin-up and spin-down transients on each end. I took the SD card home and listened to it that night on studio monitor headphones. The activation audio was exactly what it should have been. 790 Hz, steady mode, full output. Textbook. The spin-up transients were clean. The steady-state tone was stable. The spin-down at the end of the second cycle was not. As the motor decelerated, the same 3 to 4 second window, the frequency dropped through its normal decay curve. But the harmonic content shifted. The overtone structure changed. And nested in that change, like a watermark in paper, was a pattern I could not explain mechanically and could not stop recognizing. It was Claire again. But this time, it wasn't my name. It was a sentence. Something she'd said to me the last time I dropped her off at Adrienne's. Don't forget Wednesday. Not clear. Not literal. Not reproducible in a spectrogram as anything other than normal electromechanical decay harmonics. But the prosodic envelope, the rhythm, the vowel shaping, the emphasis pattern, was exact. It was her cadence. Her voice. Her specific way of reminding me not to miss our next visit, because I'd missed one in March when a siren failure in Lindsay had me in the field until 9 p.m. I sat in my kitchen at 11:30 at night with my headphones on and I played that 3-second clip 14 times. Each time, it became more her. Each time, the mechanical explanation became harder to hold onto. And each time, I felt something I can only describe as a hook in my sternum, pulling me toward the sound. I did not sleep well. In the morning, I did something worse than installing an unauthorized microphone. I modified the siren. Not much. Not in a way that affected its operational performance. The 2001-130 sound output is a function of rotor speed, port geometry, and air volume. The tone is fixed by these physical parameters. You cannot change the pitch without changing the motor speed or the rotor stator configuration. But you can change the harmonic content, the color of the sound, the overtone profile, by altering the geometry of the air path after it leaves the stator. I added a small aluminum deflector plate inside the horn assembly of Unit 14. 3 inches by 5 inches, mounted with 2 stainless steel screws to the interior wall of the bell, angled at approximately 15 degrees to the primary air flow. The effect on the overall sound output was negligible, maybe a half decibel reduction and a slight shift in the overtone balance. Well within operational spec. No diagnostic would flag it. No listener at ground level would notice it. But I noticed it. Because I had designed the deflector based on 12 hours of analysis of my daughter's voice. I had pulled recordings of Claire from my phone, birthday videos, car ride conversations, the voicemail she'd left me on Father's Day, and I'd mapped the formant frequencies, the harmonic ratios, the spectral envelope of her speech. Then I'd calculated what modification to the horn geometry would nudge the siren's decay harmonics closer to those ratios. I was tuning a tornado siren to sound like my daughter. I need you to understand that I knew this was wrong. Not operationally, the siren still met every performance specification in the Federal Signal Manual. Not ethically, exactly, I wasn't endangering anyone. The siren still sounded at 130 dB at 100 feet. It still wailed on command. It still warned people. But I knew that what I was doing wasn't maintenance. It wasn't even experimentation. It was a form of longing that I'd given mechanical expression, and I was using county equipment and my professional access to do it. I kept the microphone running. I listened to the next monthly test on May 1st. The decay was better. Closer. The shape of Claire's voice was more pronounced. Not in the steady-state tone, during the full 790 Hz output, it was just a siren, indistinguishable from the 37 others screaming across the county. But in those final seconds, as the motor wound down and the frequency slid through its descent, I heard her. "I drew you a picture." She had. The previous Wednesday, she'd given me a crayon drawing of the two of us standing next to what she said was a really tall telephone pole with the loud thing on top. She'd drawn the siren as a yellow circle with lines radiating out of it, like a sun. I adjusted the deflector plate. I changed the angle by 2 degrees and added a second, smaller plate on the opposite wall of the bell. I recalculated based on a specific recording, Claire singing "You Are My Sunshine" in the bathtub, which Adrian had sent me during a period when we were still sending each other things like that. I was not sleeping more than 4 hours a night. I was spending my evenings with acoustic modeling software I downloaded from a university research site. I was buying materials, aluminum sheet, stainless hardware, acoustic damping foam, from 3 different suppliers so that no single purchase would look unusual. I was driving to Unit 14 after hours, climbing the pole in the dark, making adjustments by headlamp. Wade noticed something was off. Not with the siren, with me. "You look like hammered garbage," he told me one morning in the maintenance shop. "You sleeping?" "Allergies," I said. "Allergies don't make you drive out to Paul's Valley at 11 p.m. on a Thursday. I saw your truck on the GPS. County vehicles have fleet GPS." I'd forgotten. "Battery check on 14, I said. Voltage was dipping on the last log. Wade pulled up Unit 14's maintenance history on his laptop. "Voltage looks fine to me. 48.2 on the last read. When did you see a dip?" "Must have been a transient. It's fine now." He looked at me for a long time. Wade is not a complicated person, but he is an observant one. He's been through his own divorce. He knows what a man looks like when he's building something in the dark. "Elliot," he said, "you need to take a weekend. Go fishing. Go see Claire. I see Claire on Wednesday. Go see her more. You're getting weird." I told him I'd think about it. I did not think about it. I drove to Unit 14 that night and replaced the second deflector plate with one I'd machined at my kitchen table from a sheet of 6061 aluminum. On May 14th, we got our second real activation. A line of severe thunderstorms pushed through central Oklahoma between 3 p.m. and 7 p.m. NWS issued 2 sequential tornado warnings for Garvin County, the first at 3:22 p.m., the second at 5:01 p.m. Total activation time across both warnings was approximately 18 minutes, with reactivations every 3-minute cycle. I was in the field this time, running between units to check for weather damage and malfunctions. I didn't hear Unit 14 in person. But the recorder captured everything. I waited until midnight to listen. I drove out to the Walmart parking lot, sat in my truck 200 feet from the pole, and played the recordings on my headphones. The steady-state tone was perfect. 130 dB, 790 Hz, steady mode. Every second of every 3-minute cycle was textbook. The decay after the final cycle of the first warning, the 3:22 activation, was what I'd been working toward. It wasn't 3 seconds. It was closer to 5. The motor took slightly longer to decelerate, which was normal for a multi-cycle activation. The bearings run hotter, the residual magnetic field in the series wound motor takes longer to dissipate. And in those 5 seconds, as the frequency slid down from 790 Hz through the mid-hundreds and into the low growl before silence, I heard my daughter. Not a word. Not a sentence. She was laughing. The specific laugh she does when I pick her up and spin her and she grabs my ears because she thinks that's the funniest thing in the world. The rhythm of it. The pitch. The way it breaks in the middle and resets higher, like joy has a staircase. I cried in the parking lot of a Walmart at 12:30 in the morning listening to the death rattle of a Federal Signal 2001 to 130 electromechanical siren, and I am not ashamed of that. But I should have been afraid. Because when I played the decay from the second warning, the 501 activation, it was different. The voice was still Claire's. The prosodic shape was still hers. But she wasn't laughing. She was saying something I couldn't quite resolve. A sentence with the structure of a question. The intonation rose at the end. The rhythm suggested 4 or 5 syllables. I played it 30 times. I couldn't make out the words. But the emotional quality was unmistakable. She was asking for something. And she sounded afraid. I called Adrian at 6:30 the next morning, before Claire would be awake for school. Is she okay? What? Yes. She's fine. Elliot, it's 6:30. Yesterday, during the storms. Was she scared? She was at school. They went to the hallway. She said it was boring. Why? I wanted to check. You could check on Wednesday. Like normal. I could hear the familiar calibration in Adrienne's voice, the precise mixture of patience and irritation that constituted our entire relationship now. I had no way to explain what I'd heard without sounding like I'd lost my mind. I said goodbye. I went to work. And I should have stopped. I should have climbed that pole, removed the deflector plates, taken down the microphone, filed a modification report admitting what I'd done, and accepted whatever professional consequence came. A reprimand. A suspension. Maybe termination. Those were survivable things. Instead, I made a third adjustment. I told myself I needed to resolve the unclear speech from the second decay. I told myself that if I could just refine the harmonic shaping a little further, I'd be able to hear what she was asking, and then I'd know it was just pareidolia, my grieving brain imposing pattern on noise, and I could let it go. I redesigned the deflector array. 3 plates now, precisely angled, with calculated gaps between them that would create specific interference patterns in the airflow during deceleration. I modeled it for 6 hours. I machined the plates. I installed them at 2 a.m. on a Saturday. And then I waited for the next storm. Oklahoma obliged. On May 19th, a supercell developed over Grady County and tracked east-northeast directly into Garvin County. NWS issued a tornado warning at 6:14 p.m. A confirmed tornado, later rated EF2, touched down 4 miles west of Pauls Valley and tracked for 7 miles, destroying a farm outbuilding and heavily damaging 2 homes. 3 people were injured, none critically. I was at the EM office. The sirens activated at 6:15 p.m. and cycled for 21 minutes across 7 3-minute activations. Unit 14 was well within the warning polygon. It activated and performed perfectly. The logs confirmed it. The maintenance server confirmed it. Denise confirmed it. That night, I went to the recorder. The decay from the final activation cycle, the 7th, after 21 minutes of continuous heavy operation, was 9 seconds long. The motor was hot. The bearings were tired. The deceleration was slow and the frequency drop was gradual and smooth, and the harmonic content was shaped by 3 aluminum plates that I had designed based on the voice of my 6-year-old daughter. And I heard her. Clearly. For the first time, I heard actual words. Not impressions. Not prosodic shapes. Words. "Daddy, why is it so loud in here?" I pulled my headphones off. My hands were shaking. Not from dread. From recognition. Because that sentence, those exact words, that exact cadence, was something Claire had said to me 2 years ago, during a storm that had knocked out power at Adrienne's house. I'd driven over to bring flashlights and Claire had met me at the door with her hands over her ears and said those words, and I'd picked her up and carried her to the bathroom, and we'd sat in the tub with a blanket over us, and I'd made up a story about a bear who was afraid of thunder until the thunder apologized. The siren had not generated that sentence from live input. It had not transmitted it from Claire in real time. The siren had played back a memory. My memory. Encoded in aluminum plates I'd machined with my own hands, stored in the aerodynamic geometry of a horn assembly I'd modified, and voiced by the residual energy of an electric motor spinning down after warning 32,000 people that the sky was trying to kill them. I had built a machine that remembered my daughter's voice. And it was remembering things I hadn't given it. Wednesday, May 21st. My regular evening with Claire. I picked her up at Adrienne's at 4:30. We went to Brahms for ice cream. She told me about a lizard she'd found at recess. She told me her friend Maya had a loose tooth and it was super gross. She asked me if the sirens had gone off during the tornado, and I said yes, and she asked if I'd been scared, and I said a little bit, and she said, "Don't worry, Daddy, the sirens tell people where to go." We drove to the park. She played on the swings. I pushed her and she leaned back and her hair touched the ground at the bottom of the arc and she screamed with joy, and I thought, this is the sound. This is what I'm hearing. This is what I built into the machine. But that wasn't true anymore. Because the machine was playing back things I hadn't built into it. Memories I hadn't modeled. Words that existed only in my head. I drove Claire back to Adrienne's at 7:30. She hugged me in the driveway and said, "Don't forget Wednesday." I drove to Unit 14. I climbed the pole in the last light of the day. I opened the horn assembly. The 3 deflector plates were exactly where I'd installed them. The screws were tight. The alignment was precise. But there was a 4th plate. I'm going to say that again because I need it to exist in writing. There was a 4th plate. Small. Maybe 2 inches by 3 inches. The same 6061 aluminum alloy I'd been using. The same stainless steel screws. Mounted on the interior wall of the bell between my 2nd and 3rd plates, angled at approximately 11 degrees. I had not installed it. I had not machined it. I had not designed it. I removed it. I took it home. I measured it with calipers. I photographed it. I analyzed the mounting angle and the position relative to my other 3 plates. The 4th plate was positioned to shape the harmonic decay toward a frequency band I hadn't targeted. I ran the numbers. The formant frequencies it was optimizing for weren't Claire's. They were lower. Adult range. Male. They were mine. Someone, something, had added a plate that would make the sirens decay sound like me. I need to tell you what I did next because it's the hinge point and because it's the thing I'm most ashamed of and because it's the reason I'm telling you any of this at all. I didn't remove my plates. I didn't report the 4th plate. I didn't call Wade. I didn't call Denise. I didn't call anyone. I reinstalled the fourth plate. And I added 2 more. I spent 48 hours modeling a full array, 6 plates total, that would shape the decay harmonics to include both Claire's voice and mine. A conversation. A specific conversation, from the last time we'd been happy together in a way that wasn't rationed by a custody schedule. A Saturday in September when I'd still been living at the house and we'd raked leaves in the yard and she'd jumped into the pile and I'd said, "Claire Bear, you're supposed to bag them, not wear them," and she'd said, "Leaves are better than clothes," and I'd said, "Can't argue with that," and we'd both laid down in the pile and looked at the sky through the canopy of the elm tree that Adrian would later get removed because the roots were cracking the foundation. I designed 6 aluminum plates to encode that conversation into the death spiral of a tornado siren. And I installed them at 3 a.m. on a Sunday. And then I drove home and I sat at my kitchen table and I looked at my hands and I understood that I had crossed a line I couldn't see the other side of. Not because of what I'd done to the siren, I could undo that. Remove the plates. Restore the original horn geometry. File the modification report. Take the consequences. But I couldn't unhear what the machine had told me. And I couldn't unknow that it had added a plate on its own. Or that someone else had. I checked the county fleet GPS logs for my truck and Wade's truck. Neither had been at Unit 14 during the window when the 4th plate must have been installed. I checked the security camera at the Walmart, whose parking lot is visible from the base of the pole. The footage showed no one near the pole for the relevant 48-hour period. I checked the siren controller's access log. No unauthorized activations. No maintenance access codes entered. The plate had appeared inside a sealed horn assembly on top of a 50-foot pole in a commercial parking lot in full view of a security camera without anyone going near it. On June 2nd, the storms came back. A major outbreak. NWS Norman issued 17 tornado warnings across central Oklahoma between 2 p.m. and midnight. 4 confirmed tornadoes touched down in Garvin County. One was rated EF3. It destroyed 11 homes. It killed a woman named Patricia Devane, age 71, who did not have a storm shelter and did not hear the siren because she was deaf. I was in the EM office for 13 consecutive hours. I helped Denise coordinate 43 separate siren activation cycles across the system. I monitored fault codes. I dispatched Wade to 2 units that went offline during the event, Unit 22, which lost its battery bank to a lightning strike, and Unit 7, which suffered a controller communication failure. I relayed spotter reports to NWS. I did my job. Unit 14 activated 19 times. Its logs were clean. Its performance was perfect. Whatever my deflector plates were doing to the harmonic content, the operational parameters were unaffected. The siren warned people. People took shelter. The system worked. Except one person died. And on Unit 14's recorder, across 19 activation cycles, I had 19 decay signatures to listen to. I didn't listen to them for 3 days. Patricia Devane's death sat on me like a physical weight. I had spent weeks obsessing over the sound of my daughter's voice in a machine while a deaf woman lived alone 4 miles outside the siren's effective range and no one had thought to check on her. The county had her address. She was in the special needs registry. Someone should have called. Someone should have gone to her door. That someone should have been me. On June 5th, I listened. The first 18 decay signatures were what I expected. The conversation I designed, Claire and me in the leaves, was there, distributed across the decay harmonics, audible if you knew how to listen. It was beautiful and it was terrible and it was mine. The 19th was different. The 19th was not a memory I recognized. Claire's voice was there. And mine. But we weren't talking to each other. We were talking to someone else. A third voice. Lower than mine. Older. A voice with a texture I couldn't place, not quite speech, not quite music, something between the two, like the resonance of a large enclosed space. And the conversation had a structure I can only describe as negotiation. My voice, or the siren's version of my voice, was offering something. Claire's voice was confirming it. The third voice was accepting. I couldn't make out words. The content was below the resolution of language. But the prosodic structure, the rhythm of exchange, the turn-taking, the rising and falling intonation of proposal and acceptance, was unmistakable. Something was being agreed to. I removed the plates the next morning. All 6 of mine and the one that had appeared on its own. I stripped Unit 14's horn assembly back to factory specification. I took down the microphone and the recorder. I put everything in a cardboard box in my garage. I went to Denise and told her I needed to take a week of leave. She said fine. She looked at me the way Wade had looked at me, with that careful, calibrated concern of someone who has decided not to ask the question they most want to ask. I spent the week at Adrienne's house. Not inside, she wouldn't have wanted that and I wouldn't have asked. I parked my truck on the street and I watched Claire play in the yard and I listened to her voice with my own ears and I tried to overwrite what the machine had been teaching me. On the 3rd day, Adrienne came out and brought me a glass of water. "You're scaring me, Elliot." "I know." "Are you in trouble?" "I don't think so." "Is this about Claire?" "Everything is about Claire." She sat on the curb next to my truck. She didn't touch me. We don't touch each other anymore. But she was close enough that I could smell the same laundry detergent she'd always used, and for a moment the distance between who we'd been and who we were compressed to almost nothing. "She worries about you," Adrienne said. "She tells me the sirens keep you safe. She thinks you listen to them and they tell you where the tornadoes are so you can stay away." "That's not exactly how it works." "I know. But that's how she understands your job. You listen to the sirens and the sirens talk to you." I went back to work on June 16th. I told Wade I was fine. I told Denise I was fine. I submitted my maintenance logs, which showed nothing unusual because I'd been careful to log only authorized work. I ran my monthly test check on the first Wednesday in July. 38 sirens activated. 38 sirens ran for 60 seconds. 38 sirens stopped. But Unit 14's decay was different. I was standing in the parking lot. No microphone. No recorder. No headphones. Just my ears and 200 feet of open air and the last few seconds of a siren winding down. I hadn't reinstalled the plates. The horn assembly was factory clean. I'd verified it myself the morning of the test. And I heard her. Not faintly. Not ambiguously. Not in the way you hear your name in white noise or see faces in clouds. I heard my daughter's voice come out of a machine I had restored to factory specification, and she was speaking clearly, and she said, "Daddy, when are you coming inside?" I climbed the pole. I opened the horn assembly. There were 9 plates. 9. Arranged in a pattern I hadn't designed, machined from aluminum I hadn't purchased, attached with screws I hadn't driven. 9 plates, precisely positioned, creating an acoustic geometry that my modeling software would later tell me was optimized for a 3-voice harmonic interaction across the full decay spectrum of a series wound DC motor decelerating from 790 Hz to 0. 3 voices. Claire. Me. And the other. I photographed them. I measured them. I removed them. I put them in the box in my garage with the others. The next morning, I climbed Unit 14 again. The horn assembly was empty. Factory clean. No plates. No screws. No mounting marks. But when I climbed Unit 9, the electronic unit on the east side of Maysville, which does not have a horn assembly, which does not have a chopper motor, which produces its sound through solid-state amplifiers driving speaker arrays, I found something behind the rear access panel of the speaker housing. A small aluminum plate. 3 inches by 5 inches. 6061 alloy. 2 stainless steel screws. Angled at 15 degrees. The exact dimensions and angle of the first deflector I'd ever made. I checked Unit 22. Unit 7. Unit 31, Wade's territory, 40 miles south. Unit 3, the oldest legacy siren in the county, the one on the lattice tower near the grain elevator in Elmore City. Every siren in the county had plates. Not 9. Not 6. The number varied. Some had 2. Some had 5. Unit 3 had 11, arranged in a spiral pattern that followed the interior curve of the T-128's conical horn. They were all the same material. The same screws. The same impossible presence inside sealed assemblies that no one had accessed. I counted. Across 38 units, there were 141 plates. I spent 4 days climbing every pole and opening every housing in the county. I told Wade I was doing an emergency corrosion inspection following the June 2nd storm event. He offered to help. I told him I needed to do it alone for documentation purposes. He gave me the look again, but he let me go. 141 plates. And when I modeled them, when I fed every measurement and angle into the acoustic software, the system told me they weren't shaping 38 individual decay signatures. They were shaping one. The entire county siren network, all 38 units, spread across 412 square miles, had been geometrically modified so that when they all activated and decelerated simultaneously, the combined acoustic output during the decay window would form a single coherent harmonic structure. A chord. 3 voices. Sustained across a dying sound that would last between 3 and 15 seconds depending on activation duration. Audible only in the aggregate, only during the decay, only if every siren in the network participated. Claire's voice. My voice. And the third. I did not remove the plates. I want to tell you I was brave enough or sane enough or professional enough to strip every siren in the county back to spec. I want to tell you I called the FCC or FEMA or the National Weather Service or anyone with the authority to investigate what was happening to a public safety system serving 32,000 people. I didn't. Because the sirens still worked. Every parameter, every diagnostic, every performance specification was met. The steady-state output was 130 dB at 100 feet on every electromechanical unit and within manufacturer tolerance on every electronic unit. The activation system functioned. The fault logging functioned. The communication links functioned. The only thing that had changed was what happened in the last few seconds after the sirens stopped warning people about tornadoes. And in those few seconds, I could hear my daughter. I told Adrian. Not the technical details. Not the plates. I called her on a Tuesday night and I said, I think I've done something to the sirens and I don't know how to undo it. She was quiet for a long time. Elliot, are the sirens safe? Yes. Are people safe? Yes. Are you safe? I didn't answer that one. She drove to my house. She hadn't been inside it since the divorce. She sat on my couch and I showed her the plates in the box and I played her the recordings and I told her everything. She listened to the decay recordings on my studio headphones. She played them 4 times. Then she took the headphones off and looked at me and said, I don't hear Claire. I hear a siren stopping. Listen again. The third playback, during the Elliot. I hear a siren stopping. I played the 19th recording from June 2nd. The one with 3 voices. The negotiation. She listened. She shook her head. It's mechanical noise. It's a motor slowing down. That's all it is. The plates appeared on their own. In sealed housings. On 38 separate units. She looked at the box. She picked up one of the plates. She turned it over. Did you make this? I made the first 6. The rest appeared. Elliot. I know how it sounds. Do you? Because it sounds like you haven't slept in 2 months and you're hearing your daughter's voice in machinery because you miss her and you don't know how to say that out loud. She wasn't wrong. But she wasn't right either. Because the plates were real. They were physical objects. They were in my garage. They had come from inside siren assemblies I hadn't opened. I'm going to call Dr. Brandt, she said. Brandt was the therapist I'd seen during the divorce. And I think you should take more time off work. Adrian, the plates are real. Count them. 141. She counted them. There were 141. You could have made them, she said. You have a machine shop in your kitchen. I don't have that much aluminum. Check my bank statements. Check the suppliers. I'm not auditing you, Elliot. I'm worried about you. She left at midnight. She told me she loved me, which she hadn't said in 18 months, and she said it the way people say it to someone who is sick. I stood in the driveway and watched her taillights disappear and I thought about the third voice in the siren's decay and I thought about what it might be offering and what I might be agreeing to and I went inside and I looked at the plates and I counted them again. 142. There was a new plate in the box. I hadn't put it there. Adrian had been sitting next to the box for 3 hours. It was small, 1.5 inches by 2.5 inches. Same alloy. Same screws, undriven. Loose in the box like someone had tossed it in casually. The angle of its bend was different from any plate I'd measured. When I ran it through the model, it didn't correspond to any siren in the county. It corresponded to a frequency I hadn't modeled. A 4th voice. Adrienne's. The next morning I drove to Denise's office and I resigned. I told her I was burned out. I told her the June 2nd outbreak and Patricia Devane's death had hit me harder than I'd expected. I told her I needed to step away from the work for a while, maybe permanently. She was kind. She said the position would be held for 90 days. She asked if I wanted to talk to the county EAP counselor. I said yes, knowing I wouldn't call. Wade caught me in the parking lot. What the hell, Elliot? I need a break. Bull. You need to tell me what's going on. I looked at Wade. My partner for 9 years. The men who'd driven to my apartment at 2 a.m. after Adrian and I separated because I'd called him drunk and talking about how I couldn't hear Claire's voice in my head anymore, couldn't remember exactly what she sounded like when she said my name, and that was worse than any of the rest of it. The men who'd said, "Come outside and look at the stars with me, you idiot," and sat on the hood of his truck until I fell asleep. "Check Unit 14, I said. "Open the horn assembly. Tell me what you find." He called me 4 hours later. "There's nothing in there, Elliot. Factory clean. Nothing. Not a thing." What was I supposed to find? "Check Unit 31. Behind the rear panel of the speaker housing." He called back. "Empty. Standard config." "Elliot, what am I looking for?" "Aluminum plates. Small, machined, mounted inside the horn assemblies. There's nothing like that in any unit I've looked at. Check all of them. Every unit in the county." Wade spent 2 days. He checked all 38. He sent me photographs of every horn assembly, every speaker housing, every internal surface. Factory clean. Every single one. I went to my garage.